we love to source guess, so we can source guess here. Luan said he talked to somebody in the NFL who knows the game. So, not like a assistant analytic GM, knows the game. And basically told him that Brock Purdy ain't all that, misses throws, etc. Fred Warner said, no, man, that's incorrect. This guy's a baller. I've been a Brock guy since day one when he was just the scout team quarterback. So what do we make of it? And can we source guess who told Taylor Lewan that?
If I had to source guess, as someone who's, I would say the last month I've listened to some bussing with the boys, is Rand Carthen, who is the new general manager of Tennessee, cut him. Now, Taylor was not your typical...
in the room.
Yeah. He knew he was getting cut for a long period of time. So that longtime Titan could have spent all day in the facility or half a day BSing with the guys, talking shop. He was at Ziegler's house within the last month because they have a strong relationship.
Dave Ziegler,
guidance
GM
counselor.
Of the Raiders. Swore wouldn't talk Raiders. Here we are.
Who did the Raiders play? Second to last game of the season.
49ers.
GMs watch the other team typically to just look at stuff. I think that one would make the most sense.
Can I give you one more source guess?
Yeah.
Luan went to Michigan, where 49ers quarterback coach Brian Griese played quarterback. Very different time. Doesn't feel like something Griese would say. But
when would they have sat down next to each other, though?
Did he say they sat down next to each other?
Yeah, he's like, he showed me film.
Oh, showed me film. Yeah, Griese's not on my list, but I just, in the interest of covering all connections, I'm throwing Griese out. Rand Carthen was with the Niners. I mean, Rand Carthen would have a very thorough view.
I'm going Rand or Ziegler.
Yeah, to me, the difference between Rand and Ziegler would be Ziegler might be more likely to show film because Ziegler would have the film. I don't know why Rand would have a bunch of Brock Purdy film on him. Doesn't matter to him. He's just he watched him practice, right?
Well, if you were BSing with him in his office with the Titans and you brought up the question like, is Purdy legit? And I could be anybody. If I don't think he is, and I've watched him, I'd go, look at this, bring up game whatever, look at these missed throws. I know exactly where they are if I'm Rand. Or if I'm Ziegler, I've watched the previous couple games that week checking out our opponent.
Yeah.
Right? Because I end up watching their free agents. Hell, as an evaluator, what did I miss on this Purdy guy? Am I wrong or am I right?
One thing, clearly Luan loves Tennessee, has a special place. He said on one of his podcasts he would not go back and play in the division to play against the Titans. So he could have said to Rand Carthen, Rand, are you going to trade for Trey Lance? And Rand says, they still think Trey could be their guy. Brock's not as good as you think. We're just source guessing, source takes here. The real story of that is not who the source is. The real story of it, though, is how much do we believe Fred Warner's answer was real and how much of it was just, I'm his teammate. Fred doesn't just say, I like the guy. Fred says, I've liked the guy since we started practice against him. I thought it was a pretty authentic, believable, real answer from Fred Warner on Brock Purdy.
I'd agree. I mean, he was the most outspoken guy from the jump because he had the most experience with him, right? Going up against him literally kind of mono for mono. One guy's calling the defense, the other guy's calling the offense. So he believes in him. I think at this point in time, I hold Fred to pretty high regard when not just throwing around stuff when he speaks about another player. And I'd also say he got his back from the beginning when I know most of us people on the outside are like, wait, the 7th rounder, they're fucked. How are they going to make the playoffs? How are they going to keep winning games? He was more than proven right. I mean, the guy was, relative to what they were playing with in Jimmy Garoppolo, he was an upgrade.
Yeah.
It was because I would say Fred pounded the table for him more than anybody immediately. And it had a unique perspective, right? It wasn't like Fred, we see him around the locker room. We don't practice with him as much, Kittle or Debo. Fred was like, I see this guy every single day for the last 3 months in practice, in training camp, all through whatever week that was, 8 or 10 or whatever. This guy can play.
I think it's important to give some perspective, too, because we've seen Fred Warner practice. Maybe, and if you've gone to Niner practice fans, you've seen him, too. Fred Warner gets in fights. Fred Warner talks. Do you remember early in the offseason, talked a lot of trash? Fred Warner competes. Fred Warner does not go cruise control when they go 11 on 11 in 49ers practice, right? So I think it probably matters to him who else competes. He is trying, I think, consciously to challenge other players, to challenge Brandon Ayuk, to challenge whoever. not just physically, but mentally. And so I think part of the deal with Fred Warner is, well, who is challenging me? My guess is Brock challenged him a little bit, or at least showed him that he couldn't trick Brock, right? In maybe the way that, or maybe punk Brock, whatever it is. Brock passed some test with Fred, because I think it's one thing that's clear with Fred is he tries to put people to the test in practice. And Brock obviously passed his test.
Well, Fred has famously said before game, someone asked him, like, why do you look across the field? He said, I try to find the quarterback and play a staring contest with him during the national anthem. And if I can't find him, I try to find one of their better offensive players. And if that guy moves his eyes after a while, I think I get an advantage. You know, he's kind of
And Dunphy?
I would say he's less outspoken than like Ray Lewis, but he's kind of got some Ray Lewis vibes to him. Like when you go to practice, or when you just kind of hear his mindset about football. And I think this gets back to going after Brady or what they're going to do. It's the difference between rumors. I mean, we're going to get some tangible evidence. Like, do they sign a guy, the 15th, 16th, a backup quarterback? Their mindset on it, because I do think not only do they value what he thinks, I think he's reiterating things that like Kyle believes, right? Because you would say him and Kyle are very, they parallel each other, I think, in football stuff.
Yeah.
That I would say he represents internally, and not always players represent the front office. I think it's fair to say like his words represent the powers that be on this young man. It's all going to come down to his health, but if it comes down early next week, like we think everything's going to be fine. We'll obviously know more in 3 months if he's ready to kind of start throwing, but we feel good about everything this doctor said, who's done a million of these. I think they're going to believe in this guy. Now, you still need to get a veteran quarterback, but I guess ultimately what I'm saying is I think he speaks for the powers that be. Not like those aren't their words, but I think he represents internally the mindset, represents other players, represents like what the front office thinks. They're very impressed with this guy, and rightfully so. He earned you in the NFL. You have to earn it. Like ultimately, Taylor Lewan's highly thought of, not because he was a top 15 pick, because then he became a really good player. Really good player. Like McCaffrey doesn't have respect all around the league because he was highly picked or got paid. It's because when you play him and he's healthy, he's a fucking ass kicker. And people that played against Purdy or practiced against him or watched him. That's the other thing. We watched him. It's like, God, this guy's pretty good, man.
Yep.
Franchise quarterback, all that. Who knows? Already been injured, which is obviously never good. Like one time, you get an injury. I would say too, like think about this. Mahomes had a couple weird injuries over his career, like high ankle sprain, that dislocated knee, but he never really misses time. So you never view him like this guy doesn't really get hurt.
Right.
When you get a major injury, shoulder, knee, elbow, it's just one of those things that like, I just think we look at you. I know for a fact front offices, it's always kind of the elephant in the room. Like Fred Warner, he's not an injury, never gets hurt.